Hi, welcome
Hey.
to welcome to the third World Burnout Awareness Week. I'm here with Francisco and Marie from MEDvidi, and I will pass on to you, Marie.
Yeah, it's kind of an honor for us to participate in Burnout Awareness Week because we strongly believe again that it concerns everyone. And I'm gonna talk about the connection between the burnout and mental health. Just some kind of introduction. What is MEDvidi? So we are online mental health center in the US, and we help our patients through ongoing therapy and medication management to cope with such conditions as anxiety, depression, insomnia, ADHD, OCD, and other conditions. And I'm going to talk about the connection between the burnout and anxiety, depression, and ADHD. So I guess we can go to the first slide. I prepared some
Yes.
slides so as to make it kind of more interactive. We can see that according to the statistics, recent statistics, anxiety concerns about 3.1% of population in the US. And according to the recent reports, less than 41% of workers admit that they have burnout and they suffer from that. So first things first, so what is anxiety? It's absolutely fine to feel anxious, right? Because anxiety, it's your reaction to outside stress, but when it becomes excessive, we talk about the disorder. So you might feel extremely anxious and it interferes your life during more than 2 weeks. Only after that, we can imagine that you might have a disorder. When we talk about the anxiety disorder, so it can be GAD, so it's the generalized anxiety disorder, which might be described with headaches, different controlling your worry. It becomes over the top. You might also have some panic attacks or anxiety attacks. You have trouble sleeping, you become irritable and stuff like that. Another type of anxiety disorder is the panic disorder. It's when you have unexpected panic attacks. It might be also be social anxiety disorder. It's when you feel extremely uncomfortable when you are around people, when you visit public places. And again, I want to stress that this anxiety is uncontrollable. It's over the top. It's overwhelming. It also might be phobia. Phobias are also types of anxiety, and they might be related with experiences, with objects, and with people. There is such thing as separation anxiety disorder, and many people think that it concerns only kids when their parents get divorced, but also it concerns adults when they have breakups. For some reason, they might be separated with their friends or family, so it also may turn into disorder. And also, there is such thing as selective mutism. It's rare disorder, okay, and it's mainly associated. It's more common for kids when because of specific situations, social situations, person has extremely fear of speaking up, and that's why they just prefer not to talk, and it's hard for them to talk to anyone. So, as we know what anxiety is, again, we talk about disorders right now, okay, not general everyday anxiety. Obviously, anxiety and burnout are connected. We can, according to like recent researches, like they show this connection, but it doesn't mean that they are the same thing. So, and the researchers show that it's possible that when an employee was diagnosed with anxiety disorder, they might also be a victim of a burnout, because when you have anxiety disorder, your stress is extremely high. So when you're extremely stressed, right, and you cannot control it, it might be challenging for you to feel safe and comfortable in the working environment. And this is what we have in the researches, and people describe it as your heart rate is so fast, for example, before you start a meeting, that you cannot control it. So each Google Meet turns into nightmare. That's why we can say that, yeah, they are connected, but they are not the same things, okay? Because each of them has its own features, and disorder might be diagnosed only with the help of the therapist. if we talk about the depression, okay, it's going to be the next slide. Uh,
Mhm.
Burnout also is connected to depression, but first things first, again, I'm going to start with the terminology. So depression is a mood disorder. It's usually is associated with the feeling of sadness, loss, anger when you perform your everyday activity. And this sadness, this loss, this angriness, again, is uncontrollable. It's hard for you to perform your everyday tasks. And depression is connected to your hormones level. It's associated with the serotonin deficiency. So that's why people with depression might feel fatigue. Okay, they might be feel easily annoyed. People with clinical depression might have suicidal thought. They might have changes in their eating behavior, okay, sleeping patterns. Um, and this all might happen because of the brain chemistry or hormone level. Also, it might be family history, because if your parents or family had some record of clinical depression, it might be hereditary. And also various like health conditions and mental health conditions might lead to depression, might trigger this kind of depression in you, because people with cancer, with the Parkinson diseases, insomnia, right, it's not the place where you want to be, right? And that's why you might be prone to have clinical depression. Before depression is diagnosed, it should be really carefully examined, because again, we have subtypes of depression. So it might be major depression. To be diagnosed with major depression, you might have symptoms during more than 2 weeks, or having at least one major depressive episode. So when you have depressive episode, it doesn't mean that you have depression. You have depressive episodes. And if it's left uncured, it might lead to depression. The next one is persistent depression. It lasts more than 2 years. Okay. Also, if you talk about bipolar disorder, so we know that this one is associated with the manic and depression episode. So depression takes place here as well. Also, there might be depressive psychosis. So it's associated with hallucinations, delusions. Also, it should be mentioned that prenatal depression concerns women, especially when they give birth. So it may like take them 4 weeks after giving birth, or they also might feel it when or while they are pregnant. Okay. Also, another one which was interesting, because I learned about that maybe a couple of years ago, that there is premenstrual dysphoric depression. And the symptoms of some common premenstrual, right, so syndrome, they are so harsh that the person needs medication and therapy to cope with that during that. Also, another one is seasonal depression. Especially it concerns those places where there is like no sun. Like my friend, she lives in Poland, and there is no like as much sun as in Spain, for instance, and she hates winter, and every winter she suffers from winter depression. That's why she thinks about like moving to another country, just because you cannot make sun happen, right? It's impossible. And obviously there might be situational depression, which might be connected to some events or situations, like going through divorce, or having some legal troubles, or being unemployed for a long period of time, or maybe some members of your family like go through some serious illness, or maybe there was some death of some loved one. So this situation might trigger the imbalance in your brain and cause depression. And also there is one more, atypical depression. This one is quite common despite its name. Atypical depression goes away when you experience some positive events. So that's why it's atypical, because when you have common depression, it's hard for you to concentrate on some good stuff happening. But with atypical depression, positive events give you this boost of hormones. And if we talk about the connection between the depression and burnout, so they share some common features, like loss of difficulty concentrating. The major difference is that depression has kind of strict timeline. your symptoms last at least 2 weeks. And the burnout, like you may not notice when it happens because it has some kind of accumulative effect, right? So it just happens, and then it's like kind of blows up. And that's why if we study different researches and articles by professional doctors, they say that burnout might be the cause of depression or might be the reason for depression, but these two are not the same things. And burnout is not spontaneous, right? So if something happens in your life, like as we discussed before, situational depression, while burnout again is accumulative, it happens daily from day to day. And that's why when we talk to our patients, we offer them to do the journaling. Even though you don't have some diagnosed disorder, if you track your daily condition, it would be easier for you to analyze yourself, your mental health, your mental state, and it would be easier for you to work things out in the future. So, plus, depression might require medication combined with therapy. And also, there is one delusion that many people think that if you have depression and you take meds, that's all. No, it doesn't work this way. Therapy involves therapist plus medication. It's the most useful way and maybe the most beneficial one, because when you take medication, you help your body, you help your physical part, right? When you talk to the therapist, you work with your feelings, you work with your mental state. So, and these two things combined make the best benefit you can ever have. uh, so, and that's why if you talk about the depression, especially burnout related depression, you must mention that when you go to the therapist, because unfortunately, not in all countries in the world, burnout is an official. I'm not sure it's like disorder.
Syndrome.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important not to confuse these two states, because it demands careful examination step by step. And the most curious one is the connection of the burnout and ADHD. So first things first. Oh, sorry, one sec. One more thing about the depression. Please pay attention to the difference between feel depressed and have depression.
Yeah.
When you are depressed, you feel down, you have low mood, but it doesn't mean that you have depression. Don't self-diagnose. Don't prescribe yourself anything without meds. So yeah, we just also stress this really hard. So if you talk about the ADHD, so we can see that in the US, 4.4 adults are diagnosed with ADHD. It should be mentioned that adults, in majority of the cases, if adult has ADHD, it means that this adult had it when they were kids and it was untreated. That's why they have it as adults. So ADHD is adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And this is the disorder that includes a combination of persistent problems, such as difficulty paying attention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. And that's why people with ADHD, they have unstable environment all the time. They need to force themselves a lot to concentrate, to perform the task, not to get distracted. So also it's interesting that anxiety and usually people with ADHD, they have comorbid states. It means that they might have ADHD plus anxiety, or ADHD plus depression, or ADHD plus insomnia. So in majority of the cases, it's a comorbid state. And researchers show that people with ADHD, due to their symptoms like lack of motivation, constant exhaustion, difficulty to concentrate, they make extra effort all the time. They put a lot of energy all the time. They have to try harder than the rest in the workplace because they use all the energy to perform one task. And that's why people with ADHD might be more prone to burnout. It's interesting that this study showed that the number of people with ADHD and burnout, it's called ADHD burnout, grow persistently. And it has grown for about 6-7% in comparison with the last year. So what can be done with people with ADHD? So they have, it's like harsh to say they have luck, okay? But due to the fact that ADHD is an official mental disorder, and it was accepted by the medical society, you have the right to demand help at your workplace. What do I mean by help? For instance, you can ask your boss to make your regular tasks, I would say, okay, I will paraphrase it. So, for instance, you have a lot of meetings, okay, and you can ask your colleagues to write your follow-ups in written form. Obviously, if you have a lot of work, try to learn how to say no. Avoid extra shifts. Don't take extra tasks. Focus on what you can do, and they don't take more. And it's fine, because you're a person and your mental health is a priority here. Also, it's important for people with ADHD to take some time, because many people think that when they don't do anything, it's something bad. They feel guilty. But actually, giving rest to your body, it's the same as drinking water every day. Because if you don't drink water, you become dehydrated, right? So if you don't rest, you become exhausted. It's actually as simple as that. Also, you might ask your boss for accommodation that suits you. For instance, some peaceful and quiet place in the office, or you can wear special ear plugs, okay, which make it easier for you to concentrate, because they circum the outside noise. And you may ask them to use different task organizers, okay, so as to see the agendas, the particular set of tasks with the deadlines, so as to stay focused here. Yeah. And also, it's important for people with ADHD to take movement breaks, because when you move your body, you get distracted, okay? Your body thinks about moving legs and arms, muscles, okay? Blood runs in your veins. You feel rested, okay? Your hormone level rises, and you might feel better. And one more, the last but not least, is just to practice acceptance, because this is who you are, and it doesn't make you less of a person. You just work this way, and if when you know what can be done to make you feel better, then just go for it. And that's absolutely fine to ask for help, to I don't know, make environment comfortable for yourself, so as to exist in a workspace environment. Yep. So this is what we usually advise to people with ADHD. Obviously, don't forget about the therapy and medication. It's also super important. Yep. And this is what I can say about the connection of mental health and burnout.
Thank you, Marie. That was very, very insightful. I wrote down a lot of things.
Yeah, Carol, I'm sorry. Just so I think, Marie, it would be super helpful if some of those tips that you just mentioned, if you could just share them with the audience, maybe afterwards, or if you have some bullshit that we can share. I think that would be super, super helpful.
Yeah,
sorry,
sure. I would be glad to. I plan, so because having this checklist or guides at hand really helps. Whenever, because we all use mobile phones, so you just open it. Okay, I can do that. I can try this one. I can try this one. And if something doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. You can talk to us. Okay, we're here to help you. You can talk to a therapist. You can talk to your community. Okay, and find people who deal with the same thing as you are. Because I was browsing the community on Reddit of people with ADHD, and some of them have some unusual symptoms. Like some people have excessive rash, okay, and it's super itchy. And like, has anyone experienced that? And people are like, yeah, I did. So the support of the community is crucial here, because people go through.
Awesome. Thank you. Am I next? Well, I think I'm gonna bring some. It was very insightful to also see how burnout relates to other mental health issues. Yesterday we had in the event we had Michael Leiter, which he wrote this book with Christina Maslach, the Burnout Challenge. And one thing that he said, that he says in the book, and that he also said in the panel yesterday, is that burnout is a breakdown of the relationship between the worker and the workplace. So, and the breakdown ends up causing it may cause depression, it may cause a severe anxiety. So I had anxiety diagnosed prior to my burnout, and after my burnout I ended up with generalized anxiety disorder, which you have described, and I also had depressive symptoms, depressive episodes, I had panic attacks. So if you see mental health as a system, everything kind of connects to each other. And also when you have ADHD, the hyper-focus state is something that can really take you to the exhaustion because you're really into that. And that takes me to a way of working that has been popularized in the Silicon Valley in the 90s that is called the burnout shop. So what's a burnout shop? It is it's a way of functioning as a company, as a startup, that was very common in the rise of the Silicon Valley, but has been stretched out as the normal of work. It is a way of putting everything that you can in terms of energy, in terms of intellect, and working longer hours and overnight shifts. And the goal with that burnout shop would be you would create a company as fast as you could with almost no resources. And then you have this brilliant idea to put people to work in a garage. And then they would come up with a brilliant idea and they would sell that idea for millions. And then people would pocket that money and then just go sail a boat or do something else. But the thing is that as more and more startups started, getting to the same way of working, eventually that became the norm. So the pace of work didn't change after they pocketed the money. They just kept on going with the same pace. And what they say, they opened the book saying that the burnout shop today is the sprint is now a fast-paced marathon. And if we see the athletes that run on sprints, they have a very different way of preparing than the marathon athletes. Their bodies are different and their pace is different, their rhythm is different. And quite often we try to see work and we tend to deliver and to over-deliver and do everything in a sprint. And then the next week, there's another one and another one. And the thing that you said, Marie, that the burnout is this thing that comes every day and every day and every day. Myself, I'm here with the Awareness Week. It's a huge event. We have several panels. It is an extraneous week for me, but it's 1 week out of 52. I would never possibly be able to handle this for 52 weeks a year. And yet, I was just thinking of that just before we jumped here. The pace that I'm taking this week, which is really extreme for me, for my standards, and I think for, dignified work standards, yes.
Usually anyone.
It's the pace that a lot of people are taking themselves. It's the pace that I had as normal a few years back. So I think it's a very important division that we need to do is when you are working towards a goal, and sometimes you're going to take a sprint, but a sprint is something that should be quick and should have an end in sight. And you shouldn't, just connect one sprint to the next. And the way that, especially when we talk about technology companies and the tech companies have, brought their style of working into most corporate world, which is just sprint after sprint after sprint after sprint. So we have, on one hand, we have this really fast-paced, extreme job that you need to be really competent in an intellectual level, creative level, relationship level. And you need to be always on top, always on your best. And on the other hand, there's very little accommodation for people's needs, which is something that you brought up that was very good as well. When talking about ADHD, is accommodating what works best for people. And the theory of Maslach and Michael Leiter is exactly that when people have a mismatch between what makes sense for them and what they have in the workplace. That's what creates burnout. So first of all, we as individuals, we need to understand what is a good work environment for us, how we work better, how we thrive, what is a good pace for every one of us at a given time, what is a good amount of recognition, how do I want to be rewarded, what is a sustainable workload, how do I want to connect with people at work, do I want to see people every day, do I really need to be on my cocoon for most of the week and then just see people a few times a week, and I don't want to be in all of these meetings. Is my workplace treating me fairly? Is the values of my workplace aligned with my own values? Are they living the values? And when these things clash, that creates the burnout, which is this collapse of the relationship. So this would be what the burnout shops are. And I'm bringing the perspective of someone who works at a burnout shop. And my reflection here is to take a step back and think, if we are replicating those burnout shops in our own companies, in our own pace of work, and understanding that that's not sustainable, that the fast pace is something that will take you really quick, but it won't take you that far for that long. And I think I'm gonna pass it on to Francisco to talk about what leaders can do to avoid burnout, and what is the relationship between burnout and leadership. And then after, I'm gonna share with you some steps that you can take in case you are feeling that you might be at risk, or that you know someone that might be at risk. What can you do?
Thanks, Carol. I honestly, I really like the way that this is structured, where we start off by listing the different types of syndromes and diagnoses that one can have in terms of mental health and how it might relate to burnout. And now with this description from Carol, and obviously those of us who have worked in tech for over a decade, we've all seen, hopefully not as complete a picture as the burnout shop that Carol just described, but we've all seen things like that. And actually, my first contact with mental health at work came from being a leader and from noticing that I actually was replicating some of that. Because, and I'm not excusing myself, I should have known better. But the thing is, it was kind of glamorized, the idea of you work really hard, you party really hard, then you work really hard, and then you party really hard, and then you work really hard, and there's no rest. In this idea that we were sold. I don't know if I see that you're nodding your heads, but
it still is, and in so many places, it still is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember vividly a few times where I realized, or someone else just put a mirror to my face and made me realize what I was doing, not necessarily to myself, that I probably wouldn't be as concerned as what I was doing to my team. And so in particular, I remember the first time I took vacations after joining a startup, like 2 years in or something like that. And I was in this really paradisiac place with my then girlfriend. And it was supposed to be like a 2-week vacation so that I could actually reset and all that. And she was very much a workaholic. She works in the health system. But when she's out of the hospital, she's not working, right? She can have that space distance between herself and work. I couldn't. And so I was taking calls and joining daily stand-ups from a beach in Southeast Asia, and struggling with the with the internet. This was like 2015 or something like that. And I remember her telling me, do you realize that what you're doing is you're telling your team that you don't trust them? And not only that when you take time off, it isn't actually time off because you're checking in. So if you're checking in, then what's going to happen when they take time off? They will feel like they need to be checking in as well. And so that was a big moment for me, because I understood that obviously we are social animals, and and we have a tendency to imitate, and this has served us well as a species, but this can also be very, very nasty in terms of keeping those bad habits in society. So that was my first brush with mental health, and the need to be, as a leader, be very conscious first of myself, and I would start there. I think that we all, as leaders, those of us that work at tech companies or that work at startups or that work in, we kind of have, because we know that innovation is coming mostly from these digital companies, these startup companies and all that, and then it's going on. The good things and the bad things are then being adopted. Agile methodologies, all that is then being adopted by the rest of the marketplace. So we have a responsibility to be basically the last generation that accepted that a burnout shop was something good. And I see a lot of good things coming out of the new generation, where their relationship to work, and I'm not saying that this is everyone, obviously I'm generalizing, but it seems to be healthier than mine. At least that's my experience. I don't know, Carol, Marie, if you agree with what I
agree.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I wanted to give you the example. I recently reached out a blogger. She's 17 or 18 years old. She's pretty young, but she already started blogging and doing stuff on mental health. And I want to talk to her. And I like that she I always respect timing and a work-life balance of other people. So I'm against having some night calls or weekend extra work. And I like that she's like, okay, so these are my working hours, and then I'm having my me time. And I'm like, okay, I'm on your side. It says here, I get it. Girl is important. No worries. I was not going to violate your boundaries. And I was really surprised that she's so young that she understands it. And it's good that they have this, I would say, flower bulbs, growing in them. That it's important. So it's really cool.
Yeah, but on the other hand, which let's hold on to the good things. But what I see, so there's a report, there's the state of burnout in the workplace that has been released by an Australian company, and they have showed that the burnout among Gen Z is really, really higher than millennials and other generations. And we weren't able to investigate further on the reason for that. But one of the hypotheses that I rose actually was people are joining the workforce with that mentality, and then they get there and the reality is different. So there's this compass, there's the mismatch between what they want to do, what they want to bring to the table, and still the management being, oh, you need to give blood, sweat, and tears, because that's what we've been doing for the last 40, 50, 100 years. And so there's this mismatch, and there's obviously a power imbalance. So there's also a very long way of adjusting that and understanding what works best, and hopefully understanding that these guys that are coming after us, they are they get it. I think they get it in many ways. I mean, there's also the fact that they're all anxious. They're all entering the workforce, really anxious, instant gratification, all of that. But I think there's also that aspect that's also on the table.
Definitely. So I think there's a lot more there in terms of this generation and coming in. I think that with all generations, you get a breath of fresh air, and obviously there's a lot of things that the economy will need to adjust. There are some things that they need to work on, as we had a lot of them. But I do think that as leaders, we need to first be aware of what we're doing and how we're contributing in terms of creating healthy work environments in our microcosms, whatever it is, our team, our companies, whatever it may be. And we have so at Yerbo, we have a mental well-being tool. There's hundreds of thousands of people that have gone through our tools and have used them in some way. And so we have a lot of data, and there's quite a few things that I can also share with you. And so, for instance, in terms of leadership, we can see that from 2022, comparing 2021 with 2022, we see an increase of the leaders that are experiencing high risk of burnout. In 2021, there were 20% of them. and now it's 29% in 2022. So it's quite a massive increase. So you go from 21% to 29% showing high risk of burnout. This is how we measure it based on Maslach's inventory and some modifications that come out of the European academia. So we are measuring those 4 burnout dimensions, and with that we're extrapolating a burnout risk score. You can see this increase, and so this surprised us because we expected that the pandemic losing its let's say, not momentum necessarily, but not being as big a part of 2022 as it was of 2021, we would expect folks to feel better. And then we started looking at other things, like we measure 16 different job resources. So resources are the things that we have to cope with demands that the job puts to us, right? So there's 4 main types of resources, things like the task resources, so those that relate to our tasks. So say, if I feel challenged by the tasks, if I have the right tools, right? Do I have a laptop? Do I have a nice chair? Do I have all of that, right? So there are things that relate to the task, but then there are things that relate to the team, right? So are we collaborating? Are we creative, right? So are we efficacious, etc. And then there are things that depend directly on my leader. Do I have good feedback? Do I have any feedback at all? Or am I working like in the black box and no one tells me anything? So those would be like leadership type of resources. And then we have company-wide resources. And the company-wide resources are those that we usually think when we think of, at least I do, when I think of job resources, I always go first to the company ones, right? So salary, perks, right? Is it a cool place to work in, right? Or is it I don't know, what would be the worst thing, like working with weapons or tobacco or something like that, right? So do you feel valued? Do you feel pride in working for a place like that? So those would be like company resources. When we look at the data, what we find, and I can pull it up here. So some things that we realize is that most companies, when they want to improve the resource level for their employees, they try to work with the perks and the compensation, right? So they try and increase salary if they can. Right now, it's not the best moment in time for that. Or they try and increase the level of perks, right? And we've talked in different conversations throughout the Burnout Awareness Week. We talked about things like, I don't know, companies that add a pool table to the office or something like that. And they expected, all right, now everything will be okay. Now, perks, from all of the resources, we measure 16 resources, perks are the ones that have the least correlation with burnout, both positive and negative. So they're the ones that influence the least the level of burnout or work engagement that you might be facing, okay? So when a company works, it does influence it, but it's the one that influences it the least. And the second one that influences it the least is financial compensation, which is the second thing that you try to work with as a company, right? You try and increase salaries and you feel like that would be enough. And the things that actually impact the most are team coordination, the feeling of being valued by the company, and team efficiency. So these are things that are not, if you think about it from an organizational perspective, how easy is it to impact throughout the organization the team efficiency or the collaboration levels, right? This is something that it's not easy to do. How do you work on coordination at the team level? So what this tells me, and then I would love to hear your thoughts, but what this tells me is that we need to, as an organization, we need to set, obviously from top down, we need to set up the right culture and the right tools, but then we need to empower leaders and each individual worker to actually be able to coordinate better, to be more creative, to be more efficient in what they're doing, the processes that they have, because this is the things that actually help fight off the burnout risk that comes from having loads of demands and not being able to meet them with the resources. All right, I'll take a pause here, and I want to hear your thoughts, Carol, Marie, and everyone that's watching. If you want to put your questions there, and if you want to put your questions in Portuguese, we can translate it to English as well. I know we have lots of folks from Brazil watching as well, so no problem there. Yeah, Carol, Marie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I've shared so far.
Yeah, so it totally makes sense that, and there's the famous proverb that you don't quit your job, you quit your manager. At least in Portuguese, we have that. It's very common. It's
No,
very
no,
famous.
it's the same for me.
Yeah, I think it's worldwide. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And a lot, so much of it, because if it's your relationship with your job, so it has to do with both how you as a person relate to work in general. And then that also comes to if you already have anxiety, if you're a workaholic.
Yeah.
It's if you're a workaholic, you already have a lot more chances to burn out. But if you are inserted in a workplace that is not a match with your values, and the thing is, I when I interviewed Professor Leiter yesterday, asked, so if there's a company, if a company has a vast history of burnout cases, can it change? Can you stop that? And he said, well, yes, but it's not easy. You need to make fundamental changes. You need to understand that it's a people thing. It's a relationship. It's an interpersonal relationship thing. So you need to first be able to listen to people. And one thing that I'm also hearing very frequently throughout the week is the opportunity to have honest, open conversations about the stressors. We talked a lot on the panel that we had on Tuesday with Francisco, that Francisco joined us, about psychological safety as well, which is a topic that has been trending, and I really hope that it picks up, because it is the ability of sharing your thoughts and your needs and your ideas without the fear of being retaliated or being judged, taking the risk of saying, okay, this is not working for me for this and this and this. Because what happens very often with people who burn out is they just take it in and they don't say anything about it until they cannot stand it anymore. And so fostering this honest, open conversations and fostering a space where people are seen and heard, it's very difficult, because the day-to-day is very intense. And we're not saying that it's the easiest thing on earth, but it is what makes a difference. And also understanding what is causing the stress. So the thing of talking about the stressors, I think, is really important. So what is stressing you out? Because in so many cases, the things that are stressing people out are avoidable. It's like, oh, I hate the client. And then you realize, oh, it's actually a client that we really, they pay almost nothing. And, it's not very worth it to have the client, or we need to figure out our relationship. And then we have to talk to the client, because otherwise you're going to have that person, they're just going to burn out, or they're just going to quit. Because, a significant amount of people who quit in the said great resignation, the highest reason was burnout, was to avoid burnout. So before they burn out, they're saying, I don't want to work here anymore. So before you do that, just ask them. And also, we as a society to foster these moments of reflection and self-awareness. And that can be facilitated via many practices. And I love Yerbo's technology that you can do that. You can test how is your work-life balance, or how much your life is affecting your work, how much your work is affecting your life, how is your burnout levels, if you're, and where is the needle, where are you taking the needle? And you have the reminders to do that every week or so. So to monitor what's happening. And I'm already going to the, well, Marie, you can add something, and then I will say, because it has to do with listening.
I was just amazed by your speeches, guys, because when Francisco was talking about the leadership, I was thinking about like my own story, because I had a pretty unfortunate experience with leadership in a company I worked in a couple of years ago. And the reason I left it because it was the burnout, which I realized pretty late. The thing was that I realized that I cannot go there anymore. I cannot do this anymore. Like when I thought even of it, like opening the door, I had like panic attacks. I was crying because the thought was terrifying. And I was constantly asking myself, like, why I feel this way, or like, what is wrong with me? It was fine, like all these 4 or 5 years. what is going on with me? And I blamed myself for that, for feeling this way, because I loved working there. I had nice colleagues and stuff. And then as I handed in my notice and I said that I leave you, I cannot do it anymore. My leader, okay, said that maybe you have like seasonal depression, but not like clinic one, but maybe it's because, holidays are coming, it was winter, so maybe you said because of Christmas and stuff. I'm like, are you serious? Like, do you hear what I say? Like, it was, as Carol said before, it was total mismatch. We were talking some parallel universes. And then only after I quit, and only maybe in 6 months, I realized what happened. It started with the leader, because this person such like not high but unreasonably high standards, because you cannot just do your job. You need to you need to do more and more and more. It's not enough, and more. And when I tried to pause, and just do my basic task, you're not doing it enough. Like, where is your enthusiasm? You should do more. We need more and more and more. And I thought that, like, where this word more disappears. And I was analyzing years in this company, and I realized that it all started from the very top. This person was transmitting this culture of not high achievers but overachievers, like over stressed environment. And this person showed the example themselves, right? So it's no doubt that you would feel this unconscious need to jump over your head over and over again, because you see this example every day. And when you stop, you kind of fall out of it, right? You're kind of loser, you're outsider. And you ask yourself why. And it's great that I realized it, because as a manager, I also have my team, and I learned from her mistakes. Okay, I'm gonna put it this way. I made some action points, what things I would never do, what things I would never say. Like I speak with them practically every day. I ask them how they feel. I ask them, like, I prohibit them work at the weekends, work overtime, work late evening. Like, your time, we don't have any urgent tasks, so you finish at the time and that's it. If I see you browsing Miro board, I'm gonna close the access. I'm gonna delete your like profile from MEDvidi. I'm serious. And I like that in MEDvidi we have this culture, because we talk to our managers daily, weekly. We have these things. So people ask us, like, how you feel? Do you need anything? Maybe you want to rest. We had release. Maybe you want to take a couple of days off, like just to breathe out and stuff. And it's not like because I work there, but because it's true. And it's because I see the tendency that some mental health companies, they have unhealthy mental health environment.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually kind of surprising, right? Because these companies promote mental health and like this mentally healthy lifestyle, but it's kind of controversial. And I like that we stick to this culture, and it comes from the very top. And I really appreciate that. And after this contrast, between being super low, and you see this kind of attitude from your managers, from your colleagues, when you hear constant feedback, you hear that you're fine, that you're doing a good job and stuff like that. As Francisco mentioned, it's really important. And just saying kind words, if they make sense, right? So don't give good feedback if you don't feel this way, okay, but make it constructive. It's just, I see the spark in their eyes, like, oh, okay, I'm good, I did a good TikTok, okay, thank you so much. And they look forward to this feedback, they ask for that. So, and I think it's really important for the society to I understand, like, it's not going to be quick process, right? But as fast as we can, slowly, or snail slowly, okay, go to this kind of culture, because you work with people, not robots, not AI, right? People have their stuff at home, outside work, at work. Maybe they don't like the colleagues in their office, who they sit with. Maybe they stink, and that's the trigger, okay? So just simple question, how are you really, makes
Yeah.
definitely a difference here.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Marie.
Yeah, I like sharing the story, because I like showing the example that if your body tells you that something is wrong, something is really wrong.
Yeah.
Trust your guts, because
Yes.
there is a reason you feel this way, right? Because you cannot lie to yourself. You can lie to other people. You can wear a mask for other people, but you cannot lie to yourself, no matter how
Oh, you
hard
can. You can for some time. For some time,
For
you
not
can.
too long, but not for too long.
Yeah, it will
That's
get
fun,
with
right?
you.
Like,
Yeah.
sooner or later,
Yeah.
you're gonna blow up like a balloon, right? Because
Yes.
like you can distract yourself like in different ways, different some legal and illegal stuff. But anyways, at the end of the day, you wake up and you see yourself in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
When you brush your teeth and you think about your life, you're like, okay, maybe it's time for me to talk to myself about something.
Yeah.
Have this conversation. Yeah, so definitely.
Awesome. That was very good. So in case someone who's watching, if you feel like you are risking, you're almost there in terms of feeling burned out, that you have a lot of chronic stress, or someone in your team who is going for that, or someone in your family or something like that.
Yeah.
So I will advise you to taking 4 steps in order to, try to make things better for a while. So it's the TLDR, as in too long didn't read, because that's how people feel when they're done the pre-burnout, which is I just want another energetic. I just want another energy drink. So first one is to tune into your symptoms, is to take notes. So Marie mentioned journaling earlier, and I think it's amazing to do that. Any person should be doing that, should, realize, oh, I have this headache and I've been having this last week. So when I had my first burnout, I was feeling a chest pain for a year, and I didn't even stop to notice that until I took a holiday, and then I distanced myself from work, and then I came back and I realized, oh, this is, I don't think this should be like that. And then when I started listing all my symptoms, then I realized, okay, this is not normal. It's not natural. So first of all, tune into your symptoms. Notice what you're feeling that it doesn't feel like you, and also listen to other people, what they are saying about you, because sometimes people are already realizing you're not the same, the people that you trust. Second, look for help. The L, look for help, look for professional help. Go see a psychologist, go see a doctor. We have the culture in many countries, at least, we have a culture of doing checkups, regular checkups for our heart, for our blood.
Yeah.
We should also do checkups for the stress, for our emotions as well. It doesn't hurt if you are not used to therapy. It doesn't hurt to go to one session and see, this is happening. I just want to make sure I'm handling this in an adaptive way and not in a weird way. D, distance yourself from the stressors. So this is the most important thing, actually, because what Maria showed about depression and burnout is that burnout, you have this stressor, and until you develop depression, it happens very often that when the person withdraws themselves from work, they are still feeling good. When you're not because you have this spectrum, and sometimes you leave work when you're all the way collapsed, and then you cannot do anything else. But in some cases, if you realize that early on, and you withdraw yourself from work for a while, you are able to do other things, to exercise, to cultivate health in other ways. And in that moment of distancing yourself from the things that are stressing you, from work especially, take the time to self-reflect. And this is really important to understand, what am I doing with my life? What is happening with work? And what can I do about it? And then you're going to have the R, which is to revise your contract. And contract, maybe it will be legally, or in terms of scope, which is, how can I go back to work, considering that after the symptoms, after the professional help, and after distancing myself from work, I have realized this and this and that, because you're always going to have several insights. I promise you, if you do the self-reflection, you're going to get a lot of insights. So then how can you go back understanding that you cannot be the same person that you were when you were there in the first place, because otherwise you're just going to end up in the same hole again. And that is a two-way street. You need to figure out what you need and how you work best, and your workplace needs to also be accommodating of you, like what Marie says in terms of ADHD. And this is something that workers and workplaces really need to work out and understand. Workers need to understand how we work best, what are our values, what does a good job, a good enough job looks like. And a workplace needs to understand what is a good enough workplace looks like for these specific workers, because also there's no one size fits all.
Exactly.
There's one person that doesn't, they would rather not listen, they would rather not have a verbal feedback. Another person would prefer money over something that like that. So every team has a different need and has a different way of rocking, and things also change for all time. So being, in tune with what makes sense for work at that moment for you and what makes sense in the workplace. And so you can figure out, as you are when you are in a relationship, in a love relationship, like, okay, this is not working and both of us need to work on this. Otherwise, this is not going to work. And then so TLDR, tune into your symptoms, look for professional help, distance yourself from the stressors. If you cannot financially distance yourself because you need to keep on working, it happens. If you cannot physically distance yourself, psychologically distance yourself. Try to work with a psychologist or something to understand that the things that happening at work are not about you. And then just try to strengthen yourself, and last, revise your contract. And in many cases, that will mean revising your relationship with work, which is something that we should all pay attention to.
That's amazing. That's amazing advice, Carol. And one thing that I was going to say, and I know we're reaching our we're already on our last minutes, but I just wanted to mention that we said that it's really important to raise awareness and for everyone to understand, self-actualize and realize what they're actually feeling. I do want to congratulate you, Carol, and everyone that's working behind the scenes to make this happen, because what you're doing here is really valuable. And obviously I'm honored to be here. As Marie said at the beginning, we're very, very happy from Yerbo's side to just give our time as much as we can to support this mission, and hopefully this will help folks out there, and especially like just break through this taboo and make it all right to talk about this. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's an honor to be able to bring this event as well, to bring our webinar to the event as well. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with Francisco, and I absolutely love this series of webinars and panels for this, like, for the factor that it's personal, it's not commercial, it's not, it wasn't found on some internet dusty page without any. People really care. So we all provided our own examples, our own stories there, and it's really inspiring that there are still people who care. And the more, like I always say, like, the more awareness we raise, the better. If we can change life, not like of millions of people at the moment, but of 5, amazing, because these 5 can help other 5 and other 5 and other 5. So it's just an honor, as I said before, to be here and to speak about this important topic, which again concerns everyone. And talking to you guys, I said that I can do that like every day. So it's just amazing. Thank you so much for letting us in and being part of it.
And I want to also leave a segue that we're going to have part 3. So this is part 2. We have part 1 on MEDvidi's YouTube, I believe. Part 1, we explained what is burnout, and we gave a little bit of context. And now it was the relationship with other mental health disorders, leadership, and what to do in case of risk of burnout. And then we still have part 3 is going to happen in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned. Share this with everyone you know. For the Burnout Awareness event, we still have a lot of panels in Portuguese. Tomorrow, we're going to have another panel in English at 2 p.m. Central European time. That's the only time zone I'm going to take because it's a lot of math. I don't know, a lot of time zones. So on the YouTube, on the website, you can find the other time zones. But we're going to talk to Dr. Jerry Puleo. She has been researching burnout for 20 years in her how do you call that, PhD. She did a study on burnout, on organizational change, and she's amazing. And we're going to talk about leaping into the new normal or whatever it is of this post-pandemic world with remote and hybrid and quiet quitting and resignation, and how to avoid burnout with all of that, and also having the courage to change how we see work and change the culture. It's going to happen tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thank you so much for being here, and make sure to share this with everyone you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.